Good day or evening, dear participants. In this fourth lecture of Module 2, we are going to focus on the curriculum condensation pathways, approaches, and hybrid. This section is very critical, touching on addressing crises that education faces in some instances. Since this lecture is the longest one due to important concepts introduced, we are going to present it in sub-lectures, and for every new sub-lecture, we will indicate it. The introduction of the lecture is part of sub-lecture 1. Let us first introduce this lecture. This is sub-lecture 1. All over the world, some students experience difficulties in attending school regularly due to different causes, e.g., interrupted schooling, dropout, social disruption by conflict or pandemics, gender imbalance, and sparsely populated areas. In those conditions, the regular teaching of a curriculum planned for face-to-face classes in a school building with periodical attendance might be unsustainable. Curriculum condensation may be seen as a strategy to enable students to reach equivalent learning outcomes in a shorter time or through alternative pathways than those students attending regularly a brick-and-mortar school. The beneficiaries of a condensed curriculum might include A. Young people older than the usual age of secondary schooling. B. Children and teenagers who have experienced learning losses because of the pandemics, or migration displacement caused by conflict. C. Girls that are kept excluded from schooling. D. Children that are required to participate in family business. Strategies to assist the populations in the above categories have been in development for more than a century, especially those conceived for rural populations. However, the availability of new ICT has expanded the possibilities. However, a different strategy for the delivery of instruction might imply also reviewing current practices in curriculum, teaching, and assessment. What are the general views of this lecture? Behind this concept of condensing the curriculum to address crises in education, there are historical and social contexts that have shaped the curriculum, and it is strongly believed that the curriculum should be responsive to society's needs and problems rather than to the academic disciplines. A condensed curriculum is perceived as a shorthand for a guide to keeping up essential learning under disruptive conditions, allowing students to recover additional elements of learning later, even in out-of-school situations. The capability approach of the learner is proposed as a way to define the powerful and relevant knowledge that students should acquire, and to organize the curriculum around the development of competencies rather than only the knowledge offered in topics or subjects. As the experience shows, countries have had recourse to a couple of strategies for condensing curriculum in the context of the COVID-19 response, as discussed in a recent review by the World Bank, 2021, Focus on Core Subjects. For example, dedicate the same amount of time to language and literacy and mathematics as in the pre-pandemic curriculum, while reducing content in other subjects where the coverage should be almost equal to normal, face-to-face situations, and leaving out the rest. This is often the case in primary school. Focus on fundamentals. Prioritize fundamental skills and competencies, carving out chunks of the curriculum that will not be recovered, but will keep all the learning areas. After the pruning, the remaining content is supposed to be covered in full, albeit knowing that the specific situation of each region, school, community, and family will be different. This has been the norm in secondary school. These changes were quickly reverted after the pandemic, and each of them has its problems. The decisions were taken by curriculum teams without previous preparation or provision. Quite a different exercise is to plan ahead what could be a sound condensation process. This could enlarge the set of strategies for thinking about the curriculum, with an impact on classroom organization, delivery of instruction, and assessment, and also requiring a retraining of the teachers. There is an opportunity to plan, rehearse, and pilot new strategies that could lead to a more inclusive learning experience, to personalized learning, and a reduced curriculum overload. Let us now discuss the condensation process. The condensation process is a method for reducing the length and complexity of the curriculum while ensuring that the most essential and relevant knowledge and competencies are covered. The condensation process can be useful in situations where the curriculum is overloaded, outdated, or fragmented, or where the learning time is limited due to emergencies or disruptions. According to UNESCO 2024, the condensation process involves the following steps. First is to diagnose. It is a step to identify the need and the purpose for condensing the curriculum. This involves analyzing the current situation and challenges, such as the gaps or overlaps in the existing curriculum, the learning losses or inequalities caused by the crisis, the availability and accessibility of resources and technologies, and the expectations and needs of the learners, teachers, and other stakeholders. The diagnosis should also consider the vision and goals of the education system, as well as the national and international standards and frameworks. Second is to design. This step is to select and organize the content and competencies that are most relevant and meaningful for the learners and the context. This involves defining the learning outcomes and indicators and identifying the core concepts, themes, and issues that can be integrated across different subjects and disciplines. The design should also ensure coherence, balance, and flexibility of the condensed curriculum and avoid duplication or fragmentation of the content and competencies. Third is to prepare. The third step is to select the pedagogical models and strategies that can best support the delivery and assessment of the condensed curriculum. This involves choosing the methods and tools that can facilitate learner-centered, interactive, collaborative, reflective, and inquiry-based learning, such as project-based learning, problem-based learning, case studies, simulations, games, and digital media. The preparation should also consider the modalities and platforms that can be used for the implementation of the condensed curriculum, such as face-to-face, blended, hybrid, or online learning, and the devices and applications that can enhance the learning experience and outcomes. Fourth is to develop. The fourth step is to develop the materials, support structures, and platforms that can enable the effective implementation of the condensed curriculum. This involves creating the curriculum documents, guides, and manuals, as well as the learning resources, activities, and assessments that are aligned with the learning outcomes and indicators. The development should also involve establishing the mechanisms and procedures for quality assurance, monitoring, and evaluation of the condensed curriculum, as well as the feedback and communication channels for the teachers, learners, and other stakeholders. The fifth, but not the least, is to train. The fifth step is to train the teachers and mentor them during the implementation process. This involves providing the teachers with the necessary knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values to facilitate the condensed curriculum and to adapt it to the diverse needs and abilities of the learners. The training should also involve supporting the teachers with the technical and pedagogical aspects of using the resources and technologies, as well as the strategies and methods for assessing the learning outcomes and progress. The training should also include opportunities for peer learning, collaboration, and exchange of good practices among the teachers. What can happen if we apply structural adjustments to the schooling practices? It is also suggested that some structural adjustments to the schooling practices may be required to successfully implement the condensation curriculum. These adjustments are: 1. The clear-cut divisions between school grades should be replaced by competency levels not directly linked to age. 2. Assessment to be changed from content-based to competency-based. 3. A carnet des acquis is needed to register progress on the learning pathway. 4. Combining face-to-face classes with hybrid sessions implies modification to school schedules and alternative weekly and monthly time allocation, e.g. alternate schools. 5. Developing a tutoring model, for example, a behavioral, interactionist, and developmental. 6. Developing instruments for autonomous learning and building of responsibility from the side of the learners, e.g., learning contract. As you have noticed, the structural adjustments to the schooling practices is proposing an innovative way of focusing on the competency developmental abilities of the learners and not the age, and also changing the assessment from content-based to competency-based. This is very critical. The suggestion also highlights the development of a carnet des acquis to register the progress of the students, and also modify the school schedules and time allocations to something convenient to the students. The most important part of the suggestion is to introduce a tutoring model and instruments for autonomous learning through empowering students to develop self-learning skills. Let us now examine the new roles of the teacher or the mentor. This section discusses the new roles of the teacher and the mentor in applying a condensed curriculum and emphasizes the need to guide the learning process, foster a plural dialogue, and act competently and emotionally. As we already alluded to, a condensed curriculum is a type of curriculum design that reduces the amount of time spent on learning activities by focusing on the essential knowledge and skills that students need to achieve the learning outcomes. In addition, a condensed curriculum can be useful in situations where there are time constraints or disruptions in the normal school schedule, such as during emergencies or pandemics, etc. However, besides the benefits a condensed curriculum presents, there are also some challenges for teachers and learners to be aware of, as it requires a different approach to teaching and learning than a traditional curriculum. One of the challenges is that a condensed curriculum may not allow enough time for teachers to provide direct instruction, guidance, feedback, and support to their students, especially if the learning mode is online or blended. Therefore, a part of the learning process may happen asynchronously, meaning that students work at their own pace and schedule, without the presence or supervision of a teacher. This can have some benefits, such as fostering learner autonomy, self-regulation, and responsibility, but it can also lead to some drawbacks, such as a lack of motivation, engagement, interaction, and feedback. Hence, when applying a condensed curriculum, the role of the teacher might be quite different, as they need to adopt new strategies and methods to facilitate and monitor the asynchronous learning of their students. According to Sadeghi in an argument in his research paper in 2020, implementing a condensed curriculum implies that teachers need to shift their role from a direct instructor to a more indirect facilitator, who can support and enhance the student's asynchronous learning experience. The authors suggest that some of the roles that teachers can play in an asynchronous learning environment are: curriculum designer. Teachers need to carefully select and organize the content and activities that are relevant and meaningful for the learning objectives, and create clear and detailed instructions and expectations for the students. Content provider. Teachers need to ensure that the learning materials and resources are accessible, appropriate, and engaging for the students, and use various formats and media to cater to different learning styles and preferences. Learning facilitator. Teachers need to encourage and scaffold the student's learning process by providing prompts, questions, examples, feedback, and support, and by creating opportunities for collaboration and interaction among students and with the teacher. Learning evaluator. Teachers need to assess and evaluate the student's learning outcomes and progress by using various types of assessment tools and techniques, such as quizzes, assignments, portfolios, and self-assessment, and by providing timely and constructive feedback and guidance. Learning manager. Teachers need to manage and coordinate the learning process by establishing and communicating the learning goals, timeline, schedule, and deadlines, and by monitoring and tracking the student's participation, performance, and problems. Therefore, applying a condensed curriculum requires teachers to adapt and transform their role from a direct instructor to a more indirect facilitator, who can support and enhance the student's asynchronous learning experience. This is the end of Module 2, Lecture 4, Sublecture 1. Take note that Module 2, Lecture 4 has 4 sublectures to make learning more manageable and effective.